Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 2022 Cinematters New York Social Justice Film Festival. I am Rabbi Joanna Samuels, the CEO of the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan, and I couldn't be more proud to be here on my 9th day of work, welcoming you to what I know is going to be a festival that will spark meaningful conversation and hopefully will activate social change. We wanted so much to do this in person, and we are certain that we'll be back very soon in our newly renovated auditorium at the JCC. During this weekend, together we will explore some of the most crucial topics facing our society through film, conversation, events, and more, all in the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy to promote social action and collective change. We use films to reach far and wide with the intention to challenge our community in profound ways, and we use conversations to amplify these messages and to inspire us to act in ways that can change the world. This year, films shed light on timely issues including racial injustice, climate change, immigration, poverty, food insecurity, and more. This film festival is about our values as a community and how social responsibility is at the core of who we are and what we stand for as a JCC. Through this festival and the work we do in our Stern Center for Social Responsibility, we are building a community of civic-minded individuals who help create positive change in our society and beyond. We live in an amazing, diverse city, and we are so honored. I am personally honored to have with us tonight the Commissioner of New York City Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment, my former wonderful colleague from our days at Educational Alliance, Ann Del Castillo. A native New Yorker, Del Castillo has more than 25 years of experience in film and TV production, public media, and arts and nonprofit administration. Commissioner Del Castillo leads MoM's efforts to bolster the city's creative sectors of film, television, theater, music, advertising, publishing, and digital content creation, and also to cultivate a sustainable nighttime economy through the city's first ever Office of Nightlife.
Good evening. Thank you, Joanna. It's so great to see you and to be here with all of you. I was just thinking to myself that participating in these events with the Marlene Meyerson JCC, it always feels like a little bit of a homecoming because I always run into people that I know from all different parts of my experiences in the city. I think that really speaks to the sense of the community that the JCC has fostered and that continues to grow and invite people to participate in. Tonight's festival is a very important example of the kind of work that the Center's been doing with film in particular. For many years, the festival has championed people with disabilities through the Real Abilities Film Festival. And I remember when we started, which my office has been proud to partner on. And I remember when we first had this conversation about Cinematters 3 years ago, and to see how much it's grown, even in the midst of a pandemic. I think the first festival we celebrated in person together at the center, and to see that the way that you've been able to grow both the programming and the audiences during these difficult times where we're still meeting remotely is just such an incredible testament to your work and your dedication to ensuring accessibility and really a broad engagement of audiences around really important content. The Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment is really proud to be a partner with you in this effort. We really want to champion the filmmaking in New York, in particular, our creative sectors, New York's role as creative capital, but also a convener of critical thinkers around media and social justice. Documentary filmmaking has a long-standing tradition in New York City, and it's really an important part of New York City's DNA. These last 2 years, we know, have been particularly painful, but also inspiring. The pandemic certainly revealed inequities in our system, and the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery forced our nation to confront really hard truths about our nation. These are truths that the subject and co-producer of tonight's film has been challenging us to think about for the better part of 40 years more. And I've actually had the pleasure of working with Emily and Sarah Kunstler during my years in documentary at American Documentary POV around their film about their dad. And so tonight's opening film, Who We Are, A Chronicle of Racism in America, to be able to be here with all of you to celebrate the opening with this film has particular meaning to me. Having worked with the directors and to see that they've continued along this arc where their work continues to challenge us to think about these questions about social justice, injustice, and hopefully see a way forward, engage in these really difficult conversations and then commit to a better vision of the world. I just want to thank the JCC family and everyone involved in the Cinematters Film Festival for calling our collective attention to this really wonderful, inspiring, and challenging filmmaking, and reminding us that we all have a role in the cause of justice. Thank you all, and I hope you enjoy as much of the festival as you are able. Thank you.
The festival would not be possible without the incredible and steadfast support of some caring and generous individuals, as well as our key partners. First and foremost, our board of trustees that stands behind everything we do, led by our board chair, Jeff Faig. A special thanks to our generous supporters, Meg and Bennett Goodman, Dolby, and the Harnish Foundation. Thank you for believing in this festival's impact, especially at this time. Your dedication to social justice is evidenced in the success of tonight and will carry through all the weekend and beyond. We have an incredible team of volunteer leaders involved in making the dream of this festival an amazing reality. Our selection committee and youth advisory committee, who spend hours reviewing films and weighing in on choices for our audience. This festival is the product of the fruitful collaboration between the Carol Zabar Center for Film and the Joseph Stern Center for Social Responsibility. I'm really delighted to acknowledge the leadership of both Carol Zabar and Vicki Abrams, who chairs the Stern Center Advisory Board. They are incredible advocates and leaders in our social justice work year-round. I also want to acknowledge the hardworking team who put this festival together in this unprecedented time. Isaac Zablocki, Senior Director of Film Programs, Cheryl Parker, the Director of our Joseph Stern Center for Social Responsibility, Karima B. Parton, Associate Director of Cinematters, the New York Social Justice Film Festival, Barry Lovey, our Major Gifts Officer, Austin Reeders, the Program Manager of the Joseph Stern Center for Social Responsibility, Juliette Klitz, the Program Manager of our film programs, and Jessica Epstein, the Director of Marketing Operations. We're grateful to all of our partners on this festival. We're especially proud to have Dolby as a partner this year, supporting our teen initiatives. I will highlight the film Youth v. Gov, which is the hopeful story of a new generation of activists that are rising and speaking up. We make youth an active part of this festival, and we could not do it without the support of Dolby. Please welcome Glenn Kaiser, who has an amazing microphone, the Senior Director of the Dolby Institute.
Hi, thank you, Joanna, for the introduction, and thank you, everyone at Cinematters and the Marlene Myerson JCC for hosting The New York Social Justice Film Festival. Congratulations on a successful kickoff of the festival. Again, my name is Glenn Kaiser. I'm the director of the Dolby Institute, and that is an initiative of Dolby Labs to educate and inspire and empower the next generation of content creators. I'm sure that we all wish that we could be meeting up in person to celebrate the community and the power of storytelling in our culture. But at the same time, I'm grateful that we have this virtual platform to continue to connect and tell stories to each other. At the Dolby Institute, our mission is to help creatives think critically and creatively about image and sound, unlocking the power of technology to tell their stories. And as a leader in technological innovation and consumer experience, at Dolby, we recognize that our responsibility extends well beyond our office walls. And so, in partnership with Dolby's social impact and sustainability team, we are working closely with Cinematters to invest in the next generation of content creators and storytellers to help elevate their voices and bring stories of injustice to light and create calls to action for new audiences. We believe that cinema has a unique power to bring us together, to create community, and to educate. Cinema has the ability to give us the experience of other people, to help us experience different worlds, different values, different cultures. At the Dolby Institute, we seek to make the tools of cinema storytelling accessible to different perspectives and to new filmmakers. So we're looking forward to experiencing these films and innovative storytellers with you. And once again, thank you to Cinematters for creating this impactful space for us to all learn and grow together. And with that, I will hand it back to Isaac Zablocki, Director of Film at the JCC.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Glenn. I'll be joined here in a moment by my colleagues, Cheryl Parker and Karima B. Parton. I'm Isaac Zablocki, Director of the Zabar Center for Film here at the JCC. We believe that film is not just entertainment, it's a powerful tool for change that impacts our hearts and minds and reaches broadly, whether it is through our Other Israel Film Festival, which focuses on Palestinian and minority populations in Israel, or through Real Abilities, the largest disability film festival in the world, which was established here to highlight the lives and stories of people with disabilities. This work is not just our priority during MLK weekend, it is our priority here every day throughout the year. These days, film viewing can be a very isolating experience, and we wish again that we could be doing this in person. So we ask you to join us together as a community for all of the weekend events that we have, and you'll hear more about how to do that, and be a part of all the virtual conversations that are coming up. Cheryl
Hi,
Parker.
I'm Cheryl Parker, the director of the Joseph Stern Center for Social Responsibility at Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan. And as Ruth Messenger, the JCC's social justice activist in residence likes to say, social justice is not a spectator sport. This festival is not only about giving you an opportunity to watch great films, it's also about inspiring you to take action and providing you with concrete ways to do it. We'll do this by hosting conversations with filmmakers and activists after each film who will share their perspectives on how you can move from inspiration to meaningful action. We'll do this by offering hands-on service projects and an allyship workshop during the festival. And we'll also do this by following up with you after the festival with a list of ways to get involved and challenging you to make a commitment to one of them. Please take us up on this challenge. During these tough times, we're relying on support from our community more than ever before to keep our virtual programming strong and connected to each other. Please consider a donation to the JCC so we can remain a thriving hub for resources, connections, and community for years to come. To donate, please use the link we've placed in the chat, or you can visit our website at mmjccm.org/donate and choose in the menu the program that you'd like to support.
Thank you, Cheryl. My name is Karima B. Parton, and I am the Associate Director of the Cinematters New York Social Justice Film Festival for our third year. I'm very excited. It took so many people to help make this festival possible. We would also like to thank our AV team, Sam, Matt, and Jeff, as well as our amazing film intern, Jocelyn Subasic, who came to us through our community partner, Real Works, which works with youth to ready them for the workforce in the entertainment industry. To our sponsors and community partners, we would like to say thank you, and especially would like to acknowledge our media partners who help get the word out there, the New Republic, the Forward, Nywith, Film Fatales, and Final Draft for joining us again this year, and to all our festival supporters for dedicating themselves tirelessly to addressing social justice issues. And of course, we want to thank all of you. Thank you so much for being with us tonight and spreading the word during the days leading up to today, and for continuing to share our work in the days to come, since we have a lot more in store for you. So please join us all weekend and tell your friends. We really wanted to be in person. Of course, I'm actually sitting at the JCC all by myself, but for the safety of our community, we felt it was best to go virtual. So we thank you for joining us here. And this means there's no excuse not to join and honor MLK this weekend with great films and conversations. And these films will be available all weekend, which is great. And the conversations will happen via Zoom at the original screening times.
Thank you. I want to give a big thank you again to our amazing film team and all of those who put it together, to Juliet Kleitz. There's people that haven't been mentioned yet, Miranda Lee and Yara Kedem. And of course, a huge thank you to Karima for all of her amazing work here with everything that she does for this festival. We're up to tonight's opening night film, which we are honored to have, Who We Are, A Chronicle of Racism in America. It's an insightful look at our history and how it impacts our reality. It is a crucial document that takes us beyond the theoretical level and into the human level. The film is being released in cinemas this weekend by Sony Pictures Classics. A huge shout out to Sony for all their amazing work. And it is required, for those of you, I hope most of you have seen this already, it is required viewing. Everybody should be seeing this film. Please tell everyone you know. We are honored to have here with us the directors of the film, Emily and Sarah Kunstler, who have been making films for over 20 years. We screened William Kunstler Disturbing the Universe a few years back. Thank you for being back here with us. And the inspiration behind this film, who's the writer and tells the story, former ACLU Deputy Legal Director, Jeffery Robinson. Jeffrey, thank you so much for being here too.
Thank you for having me and Sarah and Emily. I'm thrilled to be here.
So I'm going to start with a few questions, but this is also an opportunity for our audience to ask questions. Audience, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we will call on you. If you want us to ask the question, we can do that, but we'll reach out and open your mic and make you a part of this conversation. We are a community center after all. So let me start with asking you just how this all started. Who came to who with an idea for a film? How did this all come together?
Well, I just unmuted myself, but there's some police cars outside, so forgive me. I'm Sarah Kunstler, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here. We're thrilled to be back. And this is definitely one of our favorite festivals, and it's just to come full circle and be here is wonderful. So what happened, I'm a lawyer, and I saw a free continuing legal education class listed at the federal courthouse in Manhattan about racism. And I didn't know who Jeffery Robinson was, but I went because it was free, not because I thought I needed the education. I went to it thinking I knew what I needed to know about the history of racism in this country, which is embarrassing to say now. But Emily and I grew up in an anti-racist home, and we thought we knew, we thought we knew it. We thought we had the education. And I heard Jeffery speak and he changed my life. I could not, after learning about the history of this country over 400 years, the way Jeffrey tells it in this really generous way, he uncovers hidden truths. He uncovers hidden history that's just hiding in plain sight, waiting to be found. And he tells you this history has been stolen from all of us, Americans of all races, and that it's up to us to reclaim it, to get it back together. And he's such a great speaker, and it was such a powerful message. And I don't need to tell you that now, because hopefully you've seen it at this point, that I walked out of that conference room at the courthouse and I called Emily and I said, Emily, what are you doing for the next 5 years? Or rather, I know what you're doing for the next 5 years because you're my sister, and this is what you're doing. And that was it. We, Jeffrey is the best teacher I have ever had on the subject, and we wanted to help him share his talk with the widest audience possible.
Jeffrey, let me ask you, when you were approached by Sarah and Emily, why did this seem like a good idea? Did it seem like a good idea?
I was at first just shocked and surprised, and I didn't quite know what to think. And we got together, they had coffee, I had hot chocolate, and they said that they wanted to make a film. And I was laughing because it was just foreign to me. I had been a criminal defense lawyer for 34 years before I came to the ACLU. And I had been giving this presentation around the country, and it was just part of what I was doing. Sarah was a criminal defense lawyer, and I was a criminal defense lawyer, so I knew people that knew her. And so I called them up and I started to find out a little bit about her. And I watched the film that they made about their father, and everything I was hearing and everything I was seeing as I talked to them and related to them made me think maybe this is a good idea. And as we talked and kind of worked through things, we met for the first time on June 20th, 2017, and 364 days later, on Juneteenth, 2018, we were in Town Hall Theater with a packed house and 7 cameras, and we filmed the presentation and went from there down the road to make this film.
So I learned so much from this film. I'm not embarrassed to say, and it was really a humbling experience. And the presentation obviously gives so much. I'd love to learn more about the format of bringing in the interviews and to bring it, because I think that really brings it home in many ways. And makes it more real. It's not just, a theoretical speech and history, but it's showing us all across America, the real people. When did you decide to put in that element, and how did you go about that?
I'll start. Jeff's presentation is amazing and dynamic, and in its full form, it's 3 hours at its shortest. This finished film is just under 2 hours. And alone, if we had filmed that presentation and put it out there, it still would have been an exhilarating experience for an audience. I truly feel that. But there's something different between how exciting it is to see Jeff live and then having that translate into watching it on a screen. So we knew if we wanted to really make this a movie, and we wanted to reach the largest possible audience, we'd have to bring in other elements. Luckily, Jeff was continuing to travel with this presentation. He still is, after we shot the town hall part. And we all, essentially jumped into a 15-passenger van and hit the road together. And everywhere we would go, where Jeff would be part of his trips to give his presentation, which was great on a lot of levels because, you know, he didn't have to take time off work. His flight was paid for, his hotel was paid for. You know, we were on a shoestring budget anyway, so it was really useful to be able to tag along with him. But wherever we would go, we would meet people whose stories would bring different elements of Jeff's presentation to life. And Sarah and I really believe in the power of first-person storytelling. We really think that to hear the stories from the people who've experienced, these people who have had the lived experience, is what really reaches audiences. So we knew that would be crucial to giving this film its heart. And we also knew to give this film its heart that we wanted to include some of Jeff's personal story. Because, you know, this is the person who's leading us on this journey, and it's natural to be curious about him and where he comes from and why he's the person in front of the audience reciting this history, retelling this history. So those were different elements that we brought in to try to make this into a real cinematic experience.
And how did you decide who you were going to interview? What was there a list? You'd go to the place and see. I mean, obviously, some of the decisions I thought were bringing in some of the more famous stories in America, and some were men on the street. So it's a nice, diverse group. How were those decisions made?
Well, it was very much made by where we went with Jeff. These were in many ways very serendipitous choices. We would go to a town where Jeff was speaking, and we and our producers, we had some amazing producers, kind of look into who lived in that area and sought out people whose stories would resonate. I mean, we always knew we wanted to go to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And that was a choice we made, and it wasn't on Jeff's speaking tour. And it was actually, at the time I first heard Jeff speak in 2017, it's hard to think back to when you didn't know something, but I learned about the Tulsa massacre from Jeffrey in that conference room in 2017. I think a lot of America learned about it subsequently when from the HBO show. What's the name of that show, Emily? Does anyone know?
Watchmen.
The Watchmen, right? And then it kind of grew after that. It entered back into the public consciousness as the 100th anniversary of the massacre approached it. Now everyone's like, oh yeah, I knew about that. I know about that. But it's only become known recently. And, you know, we went there, you know, Tulsa particularly, we didn't know anyone in that community. There was no reason for anyone in that community to trust us with their stories. We went and we contacted the pastor at the church, which is one of the only buildings, if not the only building, standing on Main Street after the bombs dropped from the airplanes and destroyed everything on that street. And the pastor invited us to come give Jeff's talk at his church. And there's something amazing about Jeff, his warmth, his generosity, his passion. The pastor wouldn't introduce us to survivors in that community or activists in that community because he didn't know who we were, but he invited Jeffrey to speak, and descendants and survivors and activists came to hear Jeff speak. And once he spoke, it changed everything for us. It was a fast way in to build trust that would have otherwise, I think, taken a lot longer to build. So that's Jeff, and his talk was our way into Tulsa. It was our way into Charleston, South Carolina. You know, Jeff and his history in Memphis was our way into Memphis. So really, from a production standpoint, from a producer's standpoint, Jeff's magnetism, the power of his oratory, and his relationships are what kind of steered the interviews we were able to get for this film.
And Jeff, you coming to this with an impressive treasure of knowledge when it comes to history. What, during this process of making this film, what did you learn? Did you learn throughout this process of the filmmaking?
Well, I certainly learned during the process of putting the presentation together, because much of that information I didn't learn until I was in my 50s, despite having a fantastic education. As we traveled on the road and put the film together, I learned a little bit about filmmaking. One thing I know is that it's an incredibly difficult thing that takes an incredible amount of talent. I think I'm a good speaker. I gave a presentation on a stage in a theater, and when I saw the first rough cut of the film, you know, I'll say something Sarah says sometimes, my jaw was just on the ground, and I was like, this is not my presentation. This is something radically different. And so I think a lot of the things that Sarah and Emily and I talked about in terms of the way an audience might be brought in to kind of engage with this information, I saw that happen as the rough cuts of the film started coming out. And I'm like, oh, now I get it. And I was adamantly opposed about having anything about my, or certainly anything significant about my personal life in the film, because it's not about me. And I have seen like cults of personality that get focused on an individual and that the issue gets lost. In the film, I said that my parents were unicorns, and they were, but they weren't unique. There were Black unicorn parents all over America doing all kinds of things to give their kids an opportunity at the same time my parents were doing that. So I was really against that, but I think the level of trust that Sarah and Emily and I built helped me get to a different place. They are very convincing when they want to be, and they are very persistent. So we kept hearing, you know, Jeff, we need this and this. And what I'll say is that now that the film has been made, I'm really happy that those things from my life were in the film. You know, we talked about Brown versus the Board of Education, and so that's desegregating schools. And it just so happened that that was something that happened in my life. And we talk about the Fair Housing Act and redlining in housing, and that was something that impacted my life. And so, like the other stories, these were stories that related to issues that I was trying to talk about in terms of our history. And I'm really glad that Sarah and Emily convinced me to put this stuff in.
One of the things that I find really brave about this film is that it's hard. It's going to be hard for some people. And I can only guess that, I mean, beyond reaching the choir, you want to reach beyond the choir too. So I'm curious to know, when you were making this film, were you thinking of an audience? Were you saying, oh, no, this audience is not going to be okay with that, the audience that we want to reach? And also, have there been reactions from audiences who felt that this was too hard for them? And how did they react to this? Not to ignore, of course, the audience that I'm sure applauded and cheered for it.
What I can say on some of that is I am a trial lawyer. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. That's what I've been, what I wanted to be since I was 11, and that informs the way I think about talking to people. And one of the things I think I've learned is that if you offer someone an opinion that's not backed up by fact, that will get shredded very, very quickly. The other thing is, if you encourage people to search out the facts themselves, that is a very, very powerful thing. And so there are times in the film where I say things like, don't believe a word I say, go look yourself. But I've looked and I know what's there, and they're going to find the same thing I found. So, so I think that influenced the way I tried to present the information, letting the facts speak for themselves, because they can speak much more loudly than an individual. I can tell you that I screened the film for some public defenders on the East Coast, and 4 of the Black lawyers in the office left in about the first 20 minutes. And they were very upset, but they were just triggered. And they said, you know, I can't deal with this. I can't watch this. We heard from them later saying, you know, thank you so much for presenting this to our office. So the people who might find it very hard to watch are not necessarily people who have to be convinced of anything. I think it can be a little bit more of a universal experience there. Sarah and Emily, what do you think about reactions?
I mean, I think our greatest challenge is getting people in the room to watch the film and not to judge it just based on its title or its poster. You know, Jeff is, I mean, he's compelling and he's brilliant, but he's also, you know, has such humility, and he really invites everyone to the table. And like he said, he speaks. He doesn't give his opinion. He uses facts. So we really feel like there's potential for this film to reach all sorts of people, you know, and it is hard, and it will be hard to watch, and it'll be hard for everyone to watch for different reasons. But these conversations are hard to have in our, you know, broader society about race and racism, and because they're hard to have, we're not having them. So we really feel like this is, to have this experience, to be open to, you know, not that the film also isn't funny at times and entertaining at times, and it has other elements, but it's definitely, it definitely challenges your thinking. I mean, if we've done our job right, it challenges the way you look at America, that you won't be able to look at it the same after you've seen this film. So we really hope that people won't be frightened away by thinking that this film is going to be hard to swallow, and that it's going to be, you know, we're not looking to punish anyone, you know, we're not looking to assign blame. We're looking to come together as a community to you know, to reclaim this history for all of us, so that we can together, you know, try to achieve a greater union.
I just have one quick thing to say, because Emily, there's really not much to add to that, and Jeffrey, but that I think part of the reason why Emily and Jeff and I get along so well is we are all, in our core, we're all radical optimists, right? We believe that the truth will set our country free. We believe that. Jeff wouldn't be giving this talk if he didn't feel that way. We wouldn't be making this movie if we didn't feel that way. And we also feel that this film is not a calling out, it's a calling in.
It's beautiful. And I think that's a big part of the program that we try to run here. Before I take questions from the audience, I actually want to ask, so we see this film, we're here for a conversation. What do you want the audience to do next? How do they follow up? And of course, tell us what the Who We Are project is.
Oh, the Who We Are project is a 501c3 organization that I started last year. I was the deputy legal director at the ACLU until March 31st, and I left that job to start the Who We Are project. And I left for 2 reasons. One was that there were young leaders at the ACLU and in the ACLU community nationwide who were ready to step up into leadership positions. And the other is that I became convinced that the solutions that America has tried when it comes to addressing racial injustice have literally all failed. There's been some success to some extent, But if you take a look around at the way things are now, you can't say that anything has worked. So why is that? And I firmly believe that the major reason that the solutions have failed is that they have never addressed the core reasons or the core issues that raise the problem. So if you're trying to solve policing and you think, well, we'll pass a law that says you can't choke anyone and that will solve the George Floyd problem. No, because the root problem of policing is much more complicated. And the only way we're going to deal with the root problem of racism in America is by knowing the truth of our history, by knowing what it took to get us where we are today. So the Who We Are project is going to focus on education with our youth, with community groups, and with corporate America and governments in America, both state, local, and federal. And by giving people the information about the facts about our history, we think we can have people look at problems differently because the solutions will be geared towards solving for the actual causes of the problem as opposed to something else. The myth of America, the myth of America exceptionalism, the myth that America has always been about equality. And I'm not saying those things are completely wrong because they're not, but they're not the whole story. And so I think one of the things I'd ask people to do is go to the Who We Are website, look for more information about these topics and see how you can support our organization and the work that we're trying to do. And I say to people often that if you are going to engage in these conversations, you need to be armed. I'm not talking about weapons. I'm talking about with facts. So there's a portion of the film where I speak to a gentleman in South Carolina who has a very different view of the Confederate flag, or the Northern Virginia battle flag, as he would say. He has a very different view than I do. But I had enough facts to talk to him in a way that I could say, you can't say something and just think that's going to stand, because I know what you're talking about. Cotton, tobacco, and rice. I know what those taxes were, and let's get to the bottom of it. And so being able to use facts in our conversations is an important way to get people to that point of cognitive dissonance where people are saying, huh, this ain't the way I thought it was. And that's the moment when somebody's willing to think about doing something different.
I would also say that something that this audience can do, if they feel like this film resonated with them, they can tell their friends about it. We're already facing a lot of backlash from people who haven't seen the film, prejudging it, and saying some harmful and offensive things. So if this film resonated with you, and you feel like it's important to see and it changed the way you think, share it. Tell your friends about it. We're opening in theaters in New York and LA tomorrow, actually, and then on Saturday AMC is doing a 250 theater release for one screening at 7 p.m. across the country, and 250 theaters for MLK weekend. So there's a lot of opportunities to see this film over the weekend. It's also going to be rolling out across the country for longer runs in theaters as the weeks go by. But if you feel like this film is important, please share that with your friends.
And watch it with your families. I think this is a film that's great to watch with your families, with families, to have conversations with family members, for family members who might agree with you, or for other family members that might not agree with you. It is a tool in many ways, and we hope that you take advantage of that tool. And it's also a film that, despite the COVID era we're in, is a film that's meant to be watched in community with other people. And that's part of the reason why we're so grateful for Cinematters, for creating this virtual community to share it with, because it shouldn't be isolating. I think what people can do is, not just share this film, but share this history. One of the things that Jeff taught me is how to be a citizen historian, how to go after primary sources, how to find history out there for myself. I mean, we talk about textbook wars and how history should be framed in textbooks for children. The best way to learn history is to go back and find out what people said themselves. And I learned that from Jeffery Robinson, and we hope that that people of all ages, but especially young people across the country, learn how to pursue history for themselves. We are living in an age where seeking out historical facts is a radical act. And we hope America's young people will do that.
Thank you, and I hope the message is amplified here and gets out to really as many people as possible. I want to give an opportunity for our audience to be a part of this conversation as well. So I'm going to call on a few people from the audience who have asked some questions. Mindy Schwartz-Brown, would you like to ask your question? You can unmute your mic and come on to ask.
I actually just asked a second question. My first question, you mentioned Jeff, if I may call you that.
Yes, please.
In your discussion that this film wasn't about you, but there was a part that I found incredibly moving, where your friend in Memphis told you about the story about the basketball game. And I think I feel the same, well, not the same way, but I found it, and you didn't know that story. And I just wondered, given some time, how you process that.
Well, I think one of the things that happened is that, I have to thank Sarah and Emily for convincing me to go down this road, because I never would have heard that if we hadn't gone to Memphis to have this conversation. And one of the things that has just been overwhelming for me is that basketball game occurred in probably 1967, because I was in either the 5th or the 6th grade. And this is just a couple of years after people who were advocating civil rights in Mississippi got disappeared, and their bodies found in a lake. Dick Oriens was 10 years older than Opie and I. He was 21 years old when this incident happened, and he was in Walls, Mississippi. I have no idea where he got the courage to act in the way he did, but that moment was very powerful and very disturbing to me. And I think I watched rough cuts of the film maybe 6 or 7 times before I noticed that Dick was crying, and that Opie was tearing up a little bit. And I thought, Dick has been carrying this for almost 50 years. Never said a word to me about it, because he wasn't going to have that team play without me. He wasn't going to tell the team, we're not going to play and it's Jeffrey's fault, or it's because Jeffrey's Black. And so it was just an example of what can happen when people in communities see each other as human beings. I think the only thing Dick needed to know is that I was Opie's friend. There were 9 children in the Oriens family, and I can name every one of them. And as far as they were concerned, I was Opie's buddy. So, that's all they needed to know. So I am grateful that making this film gave me an incident that I didn't even know it happened.
Thank you. We have a question from our good friend Ruth Messenger. Ruth, are you coming on?
Yes, I just want to say I watched the film this afternoon. I know a little bit about Sarah and Emily. Um, I thought this film was the most extraordinary film I've ever seen, and I teach this history and issues and attitudes about it all of the time. I think the three of you together did a most amazing job, and I'm delighted to see the information about it um, being shown in theaters. What I'm wondering, Jeffrey, is whether your foundation has thought about any ways, and I don't think it's easy, any ways to get it into schools, because in my judgment, the 2 hours is too much for almost any teacher I know, even including the best of them, to try to handle. And I know that if it was taught that way, kids would go home and tell their parents what they learned, and their parents would tell them it was a lie. I mean, that's the era that we're in. We've seen that I work at the JCC part-time, and we've seen that. People ask, we have presenters who like present 5 minutes of what you guys did for 2 hours. And then people ask a question saying, well, I heard what you said, but it's not really true, right? And so the question of how you get these truths across means, I think, a really special set of treatments for schools. And I hope that there's some thought on the part of your foundation for doing that. And I want to say that the chocolate chip story made me burst into tears.
Thank you. And I will say that education of youth is a critical part of what the Who We Are project is trying to do. And I'm calling it youth instead of schools, because one of the things that we are convinced of is, and really it was Sarah that was saying this first, is don't make the mistake of thinking that schools are the only place that children learn, because they aren't. Schools are one place, and we will work with schools. We have developed a study guide for the film. We are going to work with both Sony Pictures Classics and a company called Roku to market the film to schools. And we are going to work with people to come up with age-appropriate curricula to help explain this material. And I think part of what the burden on teachers is, when I started finding this stuff, after I forgave myself and stopped beating up myself, I needed somebody to blame. So I blamed my teachers. And I thought, it's their fault. How come they didn't teach me this? And then I thought, well, how could they teach it to me if nobody ever taught it to them? And so I do think that having discussions with teachers, and that's one of the things the project wants to do, we want to work with teachers to talk about how you present this information, how you can help kids understand this information. And it's one thing if you go home and mommy and daddy say, that's not true. And the kid says, well, Ma, they had the handwritten piece of paper that Francis Scott Key wrote on, and those were the words on the piece of paper. And part of it is, kids don't believe everything their parents tell them. So what I think is our education when it comes to youth is going to be to present them with objective information that they can confirm themselves. And this is a different era that we're in right now than in even 10 or 15 years ago. You don't have to go to a library and pull out cards to find a book. And kids are so competent on the internet that if you can direct them, if you go to the Virginia Historical Society and you see a document written in the 1600s, mommy and daddy can say that didn't really happen, but at some point, that child is going to be saying, I think there's an issue here. So I think it is meeting kids at the understanding level or, an age appropriate level, but giving them, like Sarah was talking about, giving them original source documents, giving them things that they can go and confirm themselves, showing them the footage of Tulsa burning on June 1st, 1921. When we originally found that footage, it was in, I think, a Fox Movie Tone file, and it was like not in good shape. It's now been digitized. And so you can say, and people are saying, People have said for a century, it wasn't that bad in Tulsa. Well, you take a look at that little piece of videotape and you can't say that anymore. So my view is that this is a battle that I am certainly ready, and the Who We Are Project is ready to engage in. And we're not going to be yelling at anybody or screaming at anybody or saying anybody is crazy. We're just going to say this stuff is really hard, but here's the original document. What do you think it means?
I just want to say a quick thing, which is Ruth, it's nice to see you, and Emily and I are such big fans, and we're a little in awe that you're here today with us. And the other thing is that the study guide that the Who We Are Project prepared does break the film up into 15 or 20-minute chunks, and makes it usable for teachers in school.
Right. We thought that was going to be your comment about 2 hours. We've heard that from a number of teachers. It's just like, that's just not going to work. And so trying to figure out how to work around that.
I need everything in 8-minute segments. That's I know for myself. I want to take one last question from an audience member, Tess Woden. She asked me to ask this question for Jeff. How long did it take it for you to develop and research the history reflected in the presentation and the movie?
I started looking at this information in August of 2011, because that's when Matt came from New York to Seattle to live with my wife and I in June of 2011, and he was starting his freshman year in high school in August. And he and I were in Seattle by ourselves for a while, and I started looking at material then and trying to put it together in a timeline. And I think the earliest version of this presentation was probably 2012, somewhere right around there. But I researched for at least a year before I gave any kind of version of this presentation, and I have continued to research. I can honestly say that I've given this presentation a lot. I don't know if it's 100 times, but it might be close to that. And I've never given the same presentation twice, because even sometimes I've given a presentation on Monday and then I give another one on Saturday. And in between Monday and Saturday, something happens and I have to create another slide or another visual because some event happens that fits into the narrative so well that I have to put it in. And so as Emily said, I continue to give this presentation around the country and it will continue to evolve. So if you saw it today, you wouldn't recognize the first 45 minutes from what you saw in this film, because the film was done in 2018 and there's a lot that's happened since then.
It's a great marketing tool to get returning customers, right?
You'll always see something different.
Yeah. Such an important film and so well done. I want to thank Jeff, Emily, and Sarah for being here with us and for presenting this film. Thank you so much. Folks, you have until tonight. It's available on our platform, and then it will be available, of course, in theaters, and hopefully we'll get out there really everywhere. Cinematters continues all weekend, so please join us Saturday night. We'll be hosting the Spotlight feature film, a romantic comedy, Americanish, and we're going to have the Q&A at 6 p.m. All of our films are available as of now. Sunday, don't miss the conversation for Youth versus Government at 2 p.m. and Ricochet at 4:30 p.m. And of course, there's an MLK weekend of service on Sunday, an Alishep workshop on Monday, and we have our short films on Monday, and then our Monday closing film is A Choice of Weapons, inspired by Gordon Parks. And we're going to have that conversation at 5 p.m. You can watch these films on your own time, but show up for the conversations, and please bring friends, tell your friends, help share all of this. I want to thank everybody who helped make this possible and for all of you for joining us here tonight. I want to thank all of our partners that are doing amazing work. Please follow up. We don't like these films just to sit there. Please check out all of the links that we have mentioned as part of the ways to follow up on these films, and we'll be sharing more of these links with you as well. Of course, there's the Who We Are project for this film, and much more to come. Thank you all so much, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.